got a really good feeling about this.
This is the Outlander Club, a Rebel Scum podcast. Everyone has a story. Here are those Star Wars stories. Don't forget to join us on Patreon for exclusive bonus content and early access. Here's your host, James Razile.
No, I'm telling you, it's going to be great. When have I ever steered you wrong?
Punch it! Leave that to me.
Welcome to the Outlander Club. I'm James Razile, and joining me right now is a very special guest. He's coming all the way from the West Coast, and he might have a small role in something kind of cool coming up. His name is Dominic Pace. Dominic, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, and hello to all your fans and listeners.
That's awesome. Okay, goodbye. That's all we wanted to do right there. But this is the Outlander Club. This is where we talk about we talk to Star Wars fans about their Star Wars fandom. So I want to talk to you right now. If you could just rewind the tape all the way back to the first time you ever saw Star Wars. Where was it, and what was that experience like? Or do you even remember it? Is it somewhere just, it happened so long ago that you don't remember, or was it yesterday?
I got to tell you, we're going to go back to 1980, where, believe it or not, my first memory was the Cantina playset. I do not recall seeing Episode 4 in the theaters. The most magical experience was when I was about 6 years old for Episode 5, which was, again, just beyond... It was bigger than life in terms of that experience, to be in a packed audience and to feel that sense of urgency from Han Solo and from all these magical characters that we know so well. But the first experience was the magic of the toys and the intricacy of the side characters, specifically Walrus Man and Hammerhead and Greedo. And when you're 5 years old, the effect that has on your imagination was just priceless, combined with the music of John Williams, which I remember so well at that age. My mother used to play the records all the time. So that initially was the initial memory as far as with the Cantina playset and the side characters. And we used to have that magnetic board that I think a lot of kids learn how to spell on. It's the alphabet and such. And I remember the first word that I spelled out ever was Jawa, and my mother was teaching me how to spell.
You picked such a great word from the Oxford Dictionary.
Yes,
Jawa. That's awesome. So how did that happen? You get the toys. Obviously, somebody probably just bought it for you, your parents or whatever. Just here's some toys. Your mother bought you some toys, and then Empire Strikes Back comes out.
Yeah.
And you want to go see that in the theater? Did you see it? How do you get to that step? How do you convince them? How do you convince your mother, who bought you toys, to be like, these toys are so cool? There's a movie now. You have to take me to this movie.
I had a really cool mom, and I think at that time, even if you were grown up, I think the fever caught from the grown-ups even in the late 70s. Before that, I know that Alec Guinness balked on science fiction movies because before that, they were kind of cheesy to do as an artist and kind of cheesy to go to see essentially as a viewer. But I think at that point, you're also looking at the height of the popularity even during that era. So I don't think it was that much out of the way, especially, if you had kids during the early 80s, that when you went to a Caldor or any type of major superstore, they had those figures. So that kind of was it. And my mother was always she always emphasized imagination and creativity. And what better way than the magic of George Lucas and John Williams, the way that she introduced that.
I have to ask you, because I don't remember the first time I saw Empire Strikes Back. It's just something that I knew, my whole life. Vader was Luke's father, whatever. How did that moment hit you as a child?
It's funny. The one moment that vividly stays in my mind is the first time we see Vader in Empire, where his back is to us. And you see this perfectly shiny, gorgeous black helmet, and the intensity that had for a 6-year-old. And again, combined with the music of John Williams, I think it was just from start to finish. You have these eternal lessons from Yoda in terms of the mythology, in terms of believing in yourself, that no matter what age you're at, the reason we're talking about this 40 plus years later is because of this eternal timepiece that Luke has created, which is just genius, and it touches on reality to me. I've never been a major science fiction fan, but just the way that George Lucas did the parallels, and Irvin Kershner especially, in terms of the relationship with family, no matter where you come from in life, the fact that there's still good in you, things that where they would emphasize, on issues like that, it just really resonates so firmly, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult. And again, that's why we're talking about it so many years later as well.
It's funny. I asked my 7-year-old niece. I said, I was just talking to her. I said, well, Star Wars is for kids, and she goes, yeah, it's for kids, but it's also for adults. And I said, why? She goes, because you have toys. That's what she said to me as a 38-year-old. She said, because you have toys. And I looked behind me and I said, well, you're right. So I guess it is.
I got to tell you, though, I mean, there's a child in all of us, and we should never leave that. We should never lose that within our own soul. And, the thing is, in terms of toy collecting, as a grown-up, I've been a Star Wars collector for so many years. It really is about the innocence and those memories that we had with our parents, with our grandparents, the magic that we had as children when we used to play with our friends. So it's not just a toy. I think when you grow up, you take the most famous film of all time, Citizen Kane, and the last words that he said, the last word that he said in that film was Rosebud. And he's referring to a sleigh when he was a child, that all the success, all of the money in the entire world does not compare to that sled when he was a child. And to me, the definition of that, I mean, you could talk to a lot of film experts, but the definition of that to me means how precious childhood is to all of us. And the memories, it's not only just a Han Solo figure or a spaceship to us, it's really the innocence of childhood. And like I said, what just a brilliant way that George Lucas pulled on every one of our heartstrings to be able to bring us here and to have this eternal, amazing and beautiful story that we get to share together.
I think that's part of what makes Star Wars so timeless too. Is it's something different for everyone because even though the movies are the movies, the books are the books, it's timeless because we had the figures and it's different. It hit us on different levels at different times in all of our lives, and it's kind of a genius that he had.
You're 100% right, and I think that's why I take it easy on anyone who might be have any criticism these days, because again, I think even the criticism is positive, because what it's showing is that people, even if they dislike maybe one episode or they dislike a storyline or a character, what have you, it still goes back to the passion of how much they care genuinely about this story because it means something to them. And I would never criticize anyone who might be critical, not to use a double negative there, but you know what I mean, in terms of the fact that everyone is passionate about it. And whether, Han Solo and Boba Fett are, for me in particular, my favorite characters, somebody else might have a favorite character within the new series or the old series that means something to them. And I can't tell you how much I respect them the same way, because again, just as much as those characters have inspired me in different ways, those characters might touch on their lives, and I'm no better or worse than them.
Yeah, exactly. I've met some people doing this podcast now that they got introduced to Star Wars through The Force Awakens, and I can't say anything wrong with that. At least they're introduced to it. Yes.
Yeah. And JJ, I mean, for me, I really enjoy him. I think he does a great job. And I think he, with episode 7, for me, I think he pulled me in. It's got to be interesting, though, because I think the power and the gusto that Star Wars had during that time is there was nothing even comparable. And now we have so much content. So I'm always curious in terms of being introduced if I was a child now, because there's so much content, so much social media, so many different ways of entertainment, sort of oversaturated in many ways. But for me in particular, the reason it was so special was because there was nothing like it. Mm-hmm. And he just, he made it with such quality, and he was so ahead of his years in terms of the way he did the special effects and everything else. So for me, that's why it made it so special. But again, I mean, that's how great is it that somebody could watch that and be introduced to it now and still feel the power and the energy that we all know and love.
I have a friend, he has a 7-year-old son, knows of Star Wars. He's never been obsessed with it or anything, but he knows about Star Wars. And during Canadian Thanksgiving this year, they had a marathon on TV for all weekend. They showed, the 7 episodic films in a row. They kept showing them. And my friend said, he's like, I fell asleep on the couch after dinner, and I woke up and he was watching, he's 7, and he was watching Revenge of the Sith. And he missed the beginning of it, but he caught on the end. And then after that, they watched Force Awakens, and then they watched Last Jedi. And he said, "Which was your favorite?" And he said, "The one where Anakin became Vader." That was his favorite one. And I was interested more so in that. I thought it would be the Force Awakens that he liked the most. But I was like, okay, so the effects, all that, it hasn't aged poorly in his eyes. Who's now he's inundated with all the new technologies. So it's impressive too that a movie from over 10 years ago can keep the imagination of a child alive today.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of that can be attributed to, in my personal opinion, the performance of Ewan McGregor. You know, again, we talk about family and we talk about the power of relationships, I think, which really resonates so strongly in the Star Wars universe. And what pops out of my mind when somebody says that, as far as the Sith, is just the fact of that brotherhood. You know, that we connect that again to life, to where, you know, that moment that he had at the end, I mean, really was very emotional. And you can completely remove yourself from the science fiction world in terms of, you know, the betrayal and sort of the, where, you know, unfortunately, even as our friends from high school, we go different paths. And, you know, the poetry, to me, again, it resonates so powerfully. And I think it's one of those elements within the universe that makes the series so magical. But with him saying that, really kind of, that makes that moment for me kind of stand out. And that might have been why he might have said that, because of that brilliant performance. I think Ewan McGregor gave, and of course Hayden did an amazing job as well. But I really, yeah, I think a lot of people, when you see sometimes on Twitter, they'll go through their favorite, 8 episodes, and a lot of times, surprisingly, Sith is on the top.
Yeah, we do every January 1st on the channel for the last 3 years. So this will be a 4th one coming. We've done a ranking Star Wars where we get a list of us over at the channel, and then a bunch of friends. We put a list, or other podcasts, we put a list together, and we do this mass ranking. And it's always intriguing to see where the prequels line up. It's unfortunately Attack of the Clones usually comes at the very bottom, but Sith is the one that fluctuates the most. 1 year it's high, 1 year it's low. And I think it also depends on the mood of everybody as well, especially after The Last Jedi came out. Last Jedi, I will tell you, was first on a lot of lists and at the bottom of a lot. It was so divisive. It was incredible.
Really has separated the community, but it's funny with Clones. I mean, one of the things that I like to pick out too, whether you like an entire film or not, are the moments. If we would go to one through 3 right now, I mean, literally, of course, you got Maul in the first episode. I loved Camino. I mean, I thought that whole Jango Fett, all of that, to me, I mean, really, and then not to mention the swooping love theme that John Williams did. I mean, this guy, I hope that, I know that Walt Disney wanted to stay preserved, for his life, but, I hope that scientists can come up with some way to keep John Williams alive for 200 years, but again, and then you go with Sith and you have that moment. So sometimes for me, even if whether I like or dislike a Star Wars film as a whole, I love when you're able to pick out some moments and still make it special for you. And again, just to overall appreciate the series as a whole there, and the magic of it. How, it's nothing, you can't talk down anything about escapism these days. And I think in one way or another, people need that. And I can't tell you what an honor it is to be a little tiny part of that now.
A little part, maybe a bigger part than we know, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. I want to know about the first movie that I think really kind of saw the negativity, The Return of the Jedi. You're a little bit older now going into this one. There are teddy bears running around. Perfect for me. They're my favorite. But how did you feel about Return of the Jedi? And did you see that one in the theater as well?
I did. I was raised by a single mom. She didn't have much money. And the thing, we'll be talking about in a few weeks is just the fact how she always did the best she could to provide for us and to give us a form of entertainment. I remember we didn't have much money during that time. But she made sure that I got a ticket the first weekend it went open. And I can't tell how amazing it was to hear an applause for the first time during a movie-going experience. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, 1983. To hear that applause after the whole skiff action scene where Luke salutes, and jumps down the diving board, and you've got all this action going on. It was really second to none for me. And again, the Ewoks really just washed over so perfectly at that age, just because, again, when you're 8 or 9 years old, I mean, it was so much fun, and they still do to this day. I always love the fact that he has included a little bit of childishness. Of course, you can talk about the criticism of Jar Jar, and I mean, I know that I've heard a little bit of criticism with the new, robot who looks like a hairdryer, somebody said the other day, but at the same time, I mean, it is for children, and it is kind of nice to break up the intensity at times, to have that sort of childlike robot that's kind of like a puppy or a dog in many ways, and of course the legendary R2 there, of course. But Return of the Jedi, that was the most magical for me, because I was 8 years old and I still believed in Santa. And during that Christmas time, my mom, Santa, my mom got me the Jabba the Hutt playset, and she also got me, again, all of these amazing side characters that I was just so fascinated with. And again, this was before a time of YouTube and social media and everything else, where you would spend hours and hours with these figures and, creating within your own, room, whether it was at my grandparents' house in Yonkers, New York, or up in my house in Ossining, New York. I mean, it just was hours and hours of pretending and creating, where you have that special closeness with the series there through the play sets there. So that, for me, Return of the Jedi was really magical. I was at the perfect age for it.
That's awesome. I always equate doing the podcast to being a kid with the action figures. I'm like, I'm basically just doing what I did, but without toys in front of me now. I'm making things up. We're talking about Star Wars. I'm making things up because I'm loving it. That's what is so good about it. That reminds me of when my mom took me to get the Ewok Village when I was a kid. She's like, we're going to go get you this. I was like, what? And we got this giant playset of Ewoks, and it was such a great time. And another friend of mine was talking about how his son, 4 years old, was watching Last Jedi, and then he's like he loved Canto Bight because of all the aliens in it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what Star Wars is. It's not. I mean, we have the overall story that we all love, but it's those, when you're a kid especially, it's those background characters, the aliens that pop out at you, and they spark your imagination in a million different ways. I love it.
Absolutely, and there's so many artists that really are to credit in regards to that. The intricacy of the weapons that we collect. I love the lightsaber and Han Solo blaster; those are two of my favorites. But also the uniqueness of the makeup. It just really, there's so many incredible artists that put all this together, and it's so great to appreciate all of them there.
Yeah, absolutely. So after that, Star Wars, it goes out. It's done. You're done with Star Wars now. Were you ever out of Star Wars completely? Or did you get into the books or anything like that?
More or less. I remember the last thing I left on was that Han and Leia had twins in one of the books, like these Jedi twins, so to speak. But to be honest, it wasn't until sort of this rumor after Jurassic Park that Lucas was going to be on board with Episode 1, that it actually, a break in the action for me in particular within those years, made it even more special before Episode 1 to go back and collect. I was part of that whole midnight line when Episode 1 came out, because again, it kind of brought back the magic and the nostalgia, because it was really a long pause for me in particular. I wasn't into the books. Of course, there was a video game or two here or there, but not really. I mean, once I heard Harrison Ford, I think there was one interview he had with Barbara Walters where he was just, they talked about a new indie, but I think he essentially said that Han Solo was dead. So I think we all kind of just put it to rest. But it made it all the more magical in my early 20s when they made that Episode 1 announcement and you saw that first trailer, to where, again, it kind of, when you take a 10-year or so break from something, or 15 or whatever, it makes it even more magical. So that's what happened with me. But no, I didn't necessarily stay connected. I started collecting a little bit. There was a life-size Han Solo and Carbonite I did purchase, as well as the Luke Skywalker Icons lightsaber, which is my favorite piece I have at home.
Wow.
But ultimately, you just kind of move on, and there was the new kind of technology and such, and we were ready to put it to rest. But how refreshing it was to bring it back. And I feel bad for Lucas with some of the criticism, because at the end of the day, we really appreciate him and we love him. It's like, your lovable loser baseball or football team, perhaps, where, you can't live without them regardless of whether, the series is to everyone's expectations or not. And what a legend this man has been. Absolutely.
And, I think he was right when he made those prequels. He said, we hear a lot now about Ahmed Best, how he had his problems and whatnot. Now he's coming forward. He says, George Lucas told me that right now they might not like you, but in 20 years, there will be adults who are kids now who are going to grow up and they're going to love you. And that's the case now, is people are looking at the prequels like you and I looked at the original trilogy. That is their original trilogy. That's what they grew up on.
Absolutely. And again, we go with the open mind, like we talked about. It's just appreciating everyone's view. I was at the popcorn counter the other day. We were going to see a movie called Midsummer, my wife and I. And this young 20-something lady, she was talking to me. She asked me if I saw Dark Phoenix yet. And I said, no, I hadn't had a chance to see it. Her eyes lit up over, this one superhero character, whatever. She was telling me the story. And, I looked at her. My wife looks at me, too. And I said, God, this is such a great example of how this woman, so inspired by something I might not have even cared for or seen for whatever reason. But for her, this meant so much. So again, I think it parallels to the Star Wars universe, to where, again, that might mean something for someone else. But overall, whether I like something personally or I don't, to appreciate the fact that Star Wars or certain, comic book series, they're for everyone. And how beautiful it is that these directors are now playing on that, to where it's not only inspiring a big, alpha male like myself or you, but also somebody else that might be from a different walk of life or a different cultural or different gender, what have you. I think it's beautiful in that regard.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just Star Wars breaks all barriers.
Yes.
It's, I mean, I'm doing this for 3 years now. I've met so many people that I'm like, if we met in real life, we probably wouldn't even acknowledge each other's existence. And it's incredible.
You're right, and I'll take it even a step further. I mean, hopefully in the coming years, I really look forward to getting involved through the Star Wars organizations, the 501st, as well as the Mandalorian Mercs in regards to charity events, to where we can really touch other people's lives as far as getting involved in making their life better and making them happier through a series that we all love. And I think that connection to where we help other people out through Star Wars, I think even makes our connection of people from all walks of life even more beautiful.
I want to go back now to the Midnight Madness for the Phantom Menace. I did not participate in this. I know, a lot of people talk about the Phantom Menace because it did lose a lot of the figures, the toys, the merchandise lost a lot of money for Hasbro at the time. Because they didn't. Well, I think they overproduced what they needed. They definitely overproduced. But
interesting.
That experience, however, is something that I was a teenager at the time. I was too cool to even care about toys, right? I did buy a Darth Maul and a Yoda from the Phantom Menace, but because no one's too cool for those two. But I was too cool for most of the action figures. Can you just walk me through what that experience was like? What was going through your mind, the excitement in you, how early you got there for the midnight release and all of that?
Yeah, it was a couple hours before, and I got to be honest, I was all in. Those figures came out, I think, maybe a month or two prior before the series came out, and I got that, even the whole walkie-talkie thing where you're able to connect it with their little digital chip, the Obi-Wan and even some of the side characters. I think there was a blue kind of R2 unit and all the side characters. To me, I had it hung up in my closet. I was all in because, again, the hype and all of the magic. I was doing a film at that time, and I was taking some interviews where I was showing off my collection on Entertainment Tonight, and even with E! Entertainment with Melissa Joan Rivers, I went on to show off some of my collection. But even they had the special figure of Samuel Jackson. Before I saw the film, I was 110% in, and I was just soaking in the nostalgia of childhood. And thank God I have a very supportive wife where she was totally on board with the whole thing, did not think it was weird in any way. But I was fully vested. It was just so exciting to kind of relive childhood. And again, I mean, these figures, they cost maybe $10 each at the time. It was really nice. And with two boys, we knew we were going to have kids at that time to be able to pass those down, whether, it was a success or failure. I was really completely 100% in on.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you're 110% in, you're getting the merchandise, movie comes out. Do you get the opening night tickets? Did you wait? Did you actually put off a wait a day? And
well, you had to wait? No, we had the opening night ticket. Yeah. Oh, we actually ended up seeing the film, but there was so much adrenaline, and we were actually at the Theater where there were people, believe it or not, I think they were involved in a charity. They were waiting there for over, I think about a year. Believe it or not, they were waiting online for an entire year. You can Google it. I could not believe it. We ended up seeing the second or the third show. I remember seeing that trailer of The Matrix, which looked so amazing with that new form of technology that the Wachowski brothers came up with I guess a bunch of other technicians. We saw the film. Again, I was a little bit taken back. I wasn't too all in on all the politics of everything. I wasn't too all in on the announcer with the pod race. But I'll tell you, I mean, the fight with Darth Maul at the end, and obviously the magic of the talents of Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor really did it for me. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't start fading at that point. Of course, Jar Jar and kind of seeing where all this was going to head, and who was going to play Darth Vader when they got older and where that was going. I mean, I think there were so many questions, but again, when you compare, I don't want to even say mark on a bell curve, but if you take any other series to where, again, we've been talking about this for 40 years, it still is so ridiculously magical. And we already bought our tickets for episode 9, so as much as sometimes you may have some criticism, at the same time, overall, you just have to respect the magic and the amount of work that these artists put into Star Wars along with George Lucas. So I was very satisfied. Did I go crazy when Attack of the Clones came out? Not necessarily, as far as with the figures and the collecting and such, but don't get me wrong, there was no question I still watched it 2 or 3 times.
So your collecting kind of faded for Attack of the Clones a little?
Correct, yes it did.
Was that due to the Phantom Menace, your reaction to the Phantom Menace as a film, or was it just because you're in a different stage of your life and you're like, this isn't something I need to do anymore?
I think every grown-up, every Generation Xer would certainly admit, I mean, I think they'd be lying if they didn't, that the magic kind of fades as you get older. It's not the same magical feel that you have to where the world is bigger than life. When you are younger, when you're 6 or 7 years old, and you see that sense of urgency from Harrison Ford. I don't even know if Daniel Day-Lewis on screen, who to me is one of the greatest actors of all time, can still add that mysticism and that magic and that realism to when how we are when we're children. The magic of, if we want to even cross over different movies as far as E.T. and the Goonies, how special that was, because you didn't know the actor's backstory maybe, or you just saw them as their character and didn't know all of the stuff that media shoots down your throat in one way or another. They were just that character themselves. Yeah. So I'd be lying if I didn't say that the magic started fading a little bit, and understandably so. I think any grown-up, it's hard to sometimes get that magic 110% like we do when we're kids there. So I think that's what happened with me, but without question, I completely appreciated, Camino and Jango Fett, and ended up going to a Comic-Con where I actually got Tamura Morrison's autograph for my sons there. So all that magic, and of course all the new costumes and all the work they put into it, whether I'm completely all in or not, you still can't not tip your cap to the amazing artists that are involved in these productions.
Absolutely. I remember when the final trailer for the Monday night trailer came out for The Rise of Skywalker. I was talking to a friend of mine who's reading all the leaks. He knows, I know the whole story. I know it all. Yeah. And he was like, that was disappointing. That show was disappointing. And I said, I loved it. Personally, I stand by that. I love that trailer. And I haven't read any of the leaks. I don't want to know. I want to go in and watch it. And he's like, no, but the leaks. He goes, the leaks confirm this. And I'm like, yeah, but that's. And he's like, yeah, there might be turmoil. I'm like, none of that concerns me. What's going to concern me is the 2 hours and 35 minutes on screen, December 19th, when I'm watching that movie at 7 p.m. That's what's going to concern me. And you know what? Attack of the Clones, I was in all the leaks. I knew the whole movie like the back of my hand. I had it all, and I walked in, and I was like, and I knew it. And when it ended, I said, well, that was disappointing. And it was, and I know people, that's what everyone likes to turn to. But now, 20 years later almost, I love Attack of the Clones. It's one of my favorites. I have no shame in that. If I think of Star Wars, I think of the chase scene at the beginning when the assassin tries to kill Padme. Yes. I think of that chase through Coruscant. That's for some reason, Star Wars and that, they go to like this to me. They go hand in hand. I don't know what it is. But right. I ruined the movie because of all, like you just said, when you're a child, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
But when you do, it starts to take you out. And I think that also hurts Solo, and for a few people anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Solo for me, sometimes a negative comment or a negative review, sometimes is a compliment, sometimes to the original. I think they redid Footloose, and they redid Saturday Night Fever on Broadway and such. But sometimes there's only one. And I think you can probably count on one hand in terms, at least for me personally. And again, for those who appreciated Solo, I my hat's off to you. But again, when you grow up with Solo and Harrison Ford in terms of his alpha and his charisma, for me, I just had a hard time, no matter who played the role, seeing anyone in their shoes. But again, that's not to take away the younger generation who might be introduced to this for the first time, or even the older generation who'd say, hey, I buy it into it and I get it. I just have so much of appreciation for the actor that is Harrison Ford that I just had a hard time seeing anyone else in the shoes. And again, that's my own little bitter, fault, and not that of the production. Ron Howard is obviously such a legend. Cocoon and Willow and so many of his pieces throughout the years. Apollo 13. He's one of the most amazing directors of our time. And again, I mean, nothing to take away from that lead cast. And of course, Emilia Clarke, who is so stunningly gorgeous and powerful in her own way. But again, I mean, for me, it's more of just a compliment sometimes to the original. And I don't think you should be faulted as a fan for that. Just because, again, I mean, I wouldn't fault a child of this generation to where they loved, maybe Rugrats or what have you, when they grew up and such.
No, I completely agree. When Solo ended, my mom came out the theater and she goes, I liked it, but that was not Han Solo. that was it. And I'm like, how can you argue that, For a lot of people, he's not. And I think he did an admirable job for but he's not Harrison Ford, which is the problem.
Right. And I think everything going on these days now, everything is very hypersensitive in certain ways. I think it might be misinterpreted if you were to put a angry alpha male on screen to such an extent that Ford played it. But for me, I just loved it. And I thought that Carrie Fisher stood up to him every step of the way. I don't think there was anything submissive about it or anything social that you can argue about that relationship between the two of them. Not to mention the romance, which I miss in cinema so much, because to me, love is an amazing element to the story and filmmaking. And I hope that we get back to that at some point to where I feel like sometimes the social issues kind of overtake that. But there's nothing wrong with saying that a man needs a woman and a woman needs a man. Everybody keeps talking about this Raylo thing, and to me, I'd love to see it play out. I just don't know how Disney does those things, just again to make sure that they appeal to everybody. But again, you can't say enough about that era for me, and there's nothing wrong with appreciating that.
And the love in the original trilogies is so, it's not in your face too much. It's I love you, I know. The end. Let's move on. We're gonna kiss in the next movie. We're good.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not mushy. It's not gushy. It's boys boys don't like that kind of stuff traditionally, typically, right? So, but when we watched it, I was never like, ew. It was just what it was, right? So
and I love that moment in Return of the Jedi. Again, I know that it was used sparingly, but just when he comes out of carbonite and he asks, who are you? And she says, someone who loves you very much. I love their chemistry, and I love the fact that they're billing her top right now in the Rise of Skywalker. There, I think that's a beautiful tribute to such a legendary actress.
Yeah, and that's going under the radar a little bit, I think, too, is her name is first on that poster, and that's awesome, I think, because she said before she passed that 9 was going to be her movie, and I don't know if it's going to be or not, but they've at least out of respect made it her movie, so I like that. I like that a lot. That's good.
The original 3, I mean, that they, it's not only the storyline, but it's those original 3 that also the reason we're talking about it is their talents from Hamill, Fisher, and Ford. You can't say enough about them.
You probably couldn't pick a better trio for any cinema period. They're so strong and just awesome.
And again, I mean, within cinema, it's like you can take any project, but if you don't have the right chemistry, and I don't know what the answer is, I'm not a director, but if you don't have that chemistry, people just kind of lose you, and what a magical chemistry that was.
Yeah, there's been a few movies I've watched, a few films I've seen. I'm like, it's stronger, maybe not stronger actors, but actors who got along better on screen. Just I don't buy their chemistry. So, a lot to be said about that, and that's all casting, which you know a lot more about than I would because I don't. I never audition. I've never auditioned for a part. I just don't. I mean, I'm a great actor. Don't get me wrong.
But you know what? You compare it to life too, though, in terms of your own personal relationships. When you're dating a woman or you're dating a man or what have you, or your loved one, or somebody that you really don't care about, you can just feel that charisma, and it's either there or it's not. Sometimes there's no element when you had that girlfriend in high school or through your younger years or your wife or your husband to where you can't put your finger on it, but it's just that. As the French say, right? what did Austin Power, Dr. Evil? The French say something I don't know what, je ne sais quoi, but that's what it is. The je ne sais quoi, Je
ne sais quoi. Je ne sais Revenge of the Sith now. That is the last one of the prequels. The last Star Wars film we're ever going to get. That's what we know. That is the last Star Wars film. There's no 7, no 8, no 9. There's only Revenge of the Sith. There's you. Your fandom is beginning to fade once again. It left you in the 90s. It came back with a vengeance, and it slowly started to dwindle. Where were you on that one? Did you see the film opening night again?
Absolutely did, and I think now we can start attributing the talents and the legend that is Ian McDiarmid at this point, because really, I mean, the transition that he had to play in terms of this sort of, well-kept sort of dignitary in many ways, but then at the same time to turn to that darkness. For me, again, it's all about performance and storyline. And again, we go back to the Brotherhood. We go back to actually Natalie Portman, which I thought had her most powerful moments towards the end there. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really a good little segue into episode 4 as we knew it at that time. But I was definitely invested. But again, now just kind of moving forward, I kind of, again, faded out, not thinking that there was going to be a 7, 8, and 9 for quite some time. So I think these little pauses, and hopefully after 9, not that I want to get too old for them to continue it on, but also with all the content, I think these pauses are nice because, again, it kind of lets it sit in your mind. These characters you become even more familiar with as the years progress. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of those pauses, but at the same time, I deny if I was saying that I wasn't fully vested during those off years as well. But definitely saw it opening night. And again, Sith would definitely be up there for me, perhaps in maybe my top 4 there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious to see where Sith lies on people's, not that rankings really matter, they could change day to day their movies, but how much people love that film is really it always surprises me for some reason. I mean, I love it too, don't get me wrong, but it always, people are like, it's 4th, it's 3rd, it's 7th. I'm like, what? How's
I'll
that?
tell you this. I mean, you don't even have to. Maybe I don't even have to tell you the numbers, but the episodes. But the ones that resonate for me the most is when we are talking about family, and we're talking about relationships there, without question. And that's when I'm able to put those more towards the top of my list because of the fact that they connect with relationships and the parallels to life. So when you talk about Empire Strikes Back, the mythology, and also the relationships with the father or what have you, or just family turmoil this way or that, and it's less about the pew 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 and the ships and just the political aspect of it, I'm tuned out. But when it turns to family and relationships, like Rogue One did for me so beautifully, that's when I'm really tuned in, and I really appreciate those elements of Star Wars.
I think when people say that Star Wars, when you make these characters connected, it shrinks the Star Wars universe. But for me, I always thought the Star Wars universe as shrunken anyway, because like you just said, it's about love and it's about family. It's about this small group that we're following and this connection between them.
Yes.
So that's what I always see. So 2012, George Lucas signs the papers. Disney then is like, we own Star Wars. This is ours now. And that was the beginning of, you had no idea where it was going for you personally. But where were you when you heard that news?
I was actually excited initially at the time, and I still am, in many ways. I thought that Rogue One, in particularly, really set a precedent for it. So I thought just the fact of just the overwhelming budget. Of course, I was a little bit frightened for a minute, just in terms of, sometimes when you deal with a major studio feature, especially when it caters strictly to children, I was just a little bit concerned because, again, sometimes some of the darker elements for me, and I don't think this is wrong as a grown-up fan, to have, an appreciation for sometimes the darker parts of life. I was slightly skeptical, but also at the same time confident with the overwhelming budget that, Disney could add to it. I thought also added a lot of positivity to, again, this franchise. So in many ways, I had slightly mixed feelings, but at the same time, overall positive, just due to the fact that Disney has a tremendous amount of money, and in terms of, at least for the eye candy itself, and hopefully just a very empowering story, there was a tremendous amount of potential.
Yeah, and they just came off the first few 4 years of the Marvel films, which were all being praised, and everybody loved those films. And so it seemed to me like it was perfect. And if you ever have a chance to go to the Walt Disney Museum in San Francisco, there is a quote by George Lucas on the wall, and I'll paraphrase it. It says, he always thought of Star Wars as a Disney movie Star Wars would have been a Disney movie had Walt still been alive. That's actually the quote by George Lucas. So it seemed full circle for me that it would come to that, and that would be on the wall. That would be what he considered his franchise to be. Force Awakens comes out. They kind of take you back to the original trilogy of the feels. Opening night for you on that one?
Absolutely, without question. Without question. I was really excited. A big fan of Daisy Ridley. I thought she has been doing a tremendous job. I obviously, who wasn't excited to see Han and Chewie together again? I mean, how amazing was that? And then obviously all the tragic sort of ending of one of our most beloved characters. That was very powerful. Not to mention seeing Han and Leia together again one last time was just absolutely priceless. And then again, for me, the Jedi Steps is a suite that I play all the time in the car, the magic of John Williams, and also opening that up to the potential of seeing Luke for the first time, I thought was one of the best hooks that I've seen in the Star Wars series. I was so genuinely excited for 8 to come out at that point, and I thought JJ did an amazing job with 7 there.
I thought one of the brilliance on, I would say, the Disney front of it all is, and for me, when they first announced their slate, I said, am I going to get tired of Star Wars? There's so much Star Wars happening. But the brilliance for me was, you have the cliffhanger of 7, and then you're going to have 2 years to think about that. But then they throw Rogue One, this wrench right at you. They're like, oh yeah, guess what? You want to go back and watch the originals now. Because that movie set up A New Hope so perfectly. And I had a lot of fun with it. But it's so far removed from 7 that it kind of made you not obsessed for a little while there. And then the next year you're like, all right, let's get back to Luke and the saber that he's getting reunited with after all this time.
Absolutely. I will say this, though. I thought Rogue One was so amazing that it was a really incredible warm welcome for me. I thought it was also a tribute to, the beautiful aspect of diversity, but most importantly, caring about characters. To see that diversity, but to not see anything being pushed down your throat in terms of, hey, like this. Oh, you better like this, otherwise it's wrong. I thought the entire cast did just an amazing job through the organism of a good story. And I think that's all you need in terms of making Star Wars amazing. I don't think you need to preach anything more than just having it as it is in terms of those relationships and having characters that we genuinely care about. To see that that brotherhood that I love between Donnie Yen's character, was it Chirrut Imwe? Was that how you pronounce it? And his little sidekick there, was it Baze? Was
Baze
the name?
Malbus, yeah.
Oh man, I mean I love those guys, and I thought they were colorful. Not to mention the two stars there. I thought they did an absolute incredible job. He's got his own spinoff now with Cassian, correct?
Correct. That's going to be coming. It was apparently not going to happen, and then Tony Gilroy came in and saved the day for the Cassian show. But let's talk about another spin-off show that's coming right now. This little one called Obi-Wan Kenobi. No, I want to go into what's it called? The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian. Here's what I want to do, though. Is I want to go full circle right back to the very beginning of what we were talking about. You had the Cantina playset with all those funky aliens going on. You have the Mandalorian. I'm guessing with Boba Fett and Han Solo being your favorite character is something that you would be excited about, regardless of what eventually happened with you.
Yeah. Again, I mean, you can't say enough about side characters, and again, I can't tell you how magical that was as a child. Whether it was their color, the way that they looked, what their weapon looked like, all those things as a child was so magical to me. And shall we tell everybody? Are we okay here?
Let's do it.
In September of 2018, I've been a blue character actor for the past 20 plus years, and what I mean by that, and when I say blue collar, I take every job that I can. I went in for a simple makeup test. It was not an acting role. It was not an audition, but a simple makeup test with a company by the name of Legacy Effects. Legacy Effects is one of the heads of Marvel and Disney in terms of all of their creature creation, whether it's a creature on its own, or whether it's something for special effects, digitally, or whether it's a human being where they create prosthetics. I was very kind to a gentleman by the name of Brian Sipe. Brian is one of the heads of Legacy Effects. We hit it off for about 6 to 8 hours. He was not telling me what he was working on, but I politely gave him my business card at the end of this session. 2 weeks later, I got called in to go for a screen test on a project that was called Huckleberry. I did not know until I had a contract in front of me, as well as walking into the wardrobe room, where I saw my name, Dominic Pace, next to the title Bounty Hunter. And I can't tell you, for a lifelong fan, how amazing this was. I'm still in shock. We have my kids and I, we just are just kind of beside ourselves. My wife, just obviously a dream come true. These side figures, these side characters that have meant so much to me, to be my own one-of-a-kind, unique bounty hunter, it's just beyond words right now within the universe and the franchise that we all love. I can't tell you how humbled I am and how honored I am to be a part of this incredible franchise again that will hopefully resonate and inspire millions for many years to come.
That's so incredible. Just so you had no idea what it was. Did you think this was like a Tom Sawyer spinoff, or when you first
for initially I thought it was episode 9, but I said wait, because I heard vaguely Jon Favreau, and I didn't know maybe if Favreau was involved in. I heard at first maybe perhaps they were doing Boba Fett the movie, and it was so top secret that maybe it was it might not have been that. It could have been something for just Disney in general because he's so involved with Disney projects. I did not know, and again, when I walked into the wardrobe room and I saw these photos of these just really, really interesting characters, that we all know and love, and to see that kind of a mix with the Star Wars lore, that's when my heart started pounding, and I was quiet. I didn't say a word through the whole fitting. There were 3 costume options they had for me. 2 out of the 3 options, they had me as a masked character. So, of course, for me, and especially with Brian, with the prosthetics, for me, it's very comforting to be part of the prosthetics and to go through that experience, which sometimes takes 2 to 3 hours. So Brian really fought for me in order to make sure that not only my face is seen, but also a very unique, one-of-a-kind bounty hunter look there. So it all worked out to where I got the 1 out of the 3 to where I get to have my face with, again, in the franchise, which has meant so much to me for so many years.
We're hearing different I'm not going to ask you too much about it because it is on Disney Plus. If you want to watch it, just go and watch it on Disney Plus. But what was the filming of it like? Did you feel like you were in a Star Wars film? Did you feel like it was a series or like so just Star Wars all?
For me, maybe perhaps is my Italian roots. For me, it's always about wanting to give to others and wanting to share with others. And there was a moment that I wish I could have shared with every Star Wars fan where I could have put them in my mind and my eyes and my feet because the camera was away from me. And here I am staring within a cantina of different unique Star Wars characters. This cantina, which I played with my entire life. I mean, I'm not saying that it was the same or not. I don't know. But it was just obviously the most magical feeling that I wish every actor and every Star Wars fan could feel, because when you're an actor, you transform and you start creating that universe. And one of the most magical things you do over the years is the whole world, the reality starts escaping you. And it's almost like the Matrix, to where the world starts taking you over. And I wish, again, I could take everyone into my mind for that week and a half of filming, to where I was able to have those little moments of being completely in the moment, completely in the Star Wars universe, where all of a sudden the green screens and the cameras and everything went away except being within this character's feet and this skin. It was one of the most amazing feelings I've ever had.
It's sounding like your character is one that in 1980 to 83, 84 is a figure everyone would have had.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think it looks absolutely amazing. There's a costume designer. He has a legendary resume. His name is Richard A. Pora. He also does Orville, and he's done some previous Star Wars projects as well. But he was the one who kind of put this together and made it look really amazing. I couldn't have asked for a more unique bounty hunter. There's a bit of a story behind it. Some of the original prosthetic inspiration was from a Greenpeace convention that Brian did years prior, to where it was a character that he called Gecko. And this is not official by Disney, but that was kind of the nickname that I had from the other bounty hunters, as well as within the makeup trailer of Gecko, and I hope that stays. I think it's a pretty awesome name for this one-of-a-kind species and bounty hunter. And originally it started with kind of these bumps that a gecko would have on their head, these bumps on the left and the right side, kind of perfectly centered. But I asked Brian politely, after I did my first screen test in front of David and John, I just said, hey, it would be kind of awesome if we made it a little bit more horn-like. So they were kind enough to change that. It wasn't my decision, but I just wanted to politely suggest, being a 6'4", 260-pound man, I kind of want a little bit more deviancy to the character. So I was so happy that I was able to be able to have that adjustment, because I can't tell you how excited I am, and I hope the fans are, in terms of the look of this amazing character.
Well, I'm not going to say if I know anything about it, but I can't wait, and I think it's going to be awesome and go awesome. I will say this, there's no way your character, Gecko or not, whatever the name is, will not, like, the 100% you have to be excited about this, is going to appear in a novel at some point.
I hope so. The only thing that concerns me is just an 8-episode series for the first time, as opposed to a movie. But I hope the fans will be able to carry this character, and I can't tell you how supportive I will be with all their efforts in terms of supporting, not only with the comic conventions, but also charities, and also even just a video call to maybe wish a kid happy birthday. I can't tell you how much I'm excited to be involved in the fandom and the excitement of this character, as well as the Mandalorian.
I love that you love Star Wars. It's not just that you love Star Wars, because I don't think necessarily you have to love Star Wars, but to be as appreciative as you are for a part in this franchise, that is, for me, that's an important piece of it all. I think if you came out and you're like, I've never seen Star Wars, but it means a lot to me that you're a part of it. Like, I think Gina Carano, actually, I don't think she was a Star Wars, but she's like, this is incredible. Like, she's embracing it. And I'd love to see that.
Oh, man, and what a talent, and how beautiful she is. I mean, what a presence. I was just seeing some of her pictures the other day, and what a gorgeous talent she is. And I wish her all the best. I hope this is going to be quite a success for her, and I'm sure it will be. I
can't see this series not being a success. And from everything that, I'm as far away from this as you could be, but from everything I know, or I've heard, it sounds like this is the Star Wars movie that diehard fans have been, well, not movie, the Star Wars that diehard fans have been longing for since 1983. Absolutely, without question. I think John and David, and also all the creators there, Kathleen Kennedy
and Lucas kind of sitting on the sidelines there slightly. I think they understand what the fans want. I think John and David have been incredible fans. I mean, the work that David did, obviously, with the Clone Wars and Rebels and all of his involvement with the Star Wars universe, I think he knows how to speak to the fans. I think he knows what I've been talking about in terms of the relationships and the texture that you add, as opposed to just, again, the lightsabers and the pew, 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 and just the ships. That becomes very shallow over time. But to have those relationships and have that sense of urgency that we knew so well with Harrison Ford and so many of our original trilogy members there, even Billy D. Williams and Ian McDermott and all the amazing talents, I think they're going to be able to add that and to do it on a $100 million budget. Oh boy, that's going to be some eye candy. I'm really excited.
Oh, I cannot wait. I'm going to go and watch it right now. I'm just going to go watch. We weren't able to order it early in Canada, Disney Plus, so I have to wait until midnight or 7 a.m. I'm hearing different things about when it launches, but that's when it's going to happen. I cannot wait. This series, I got the actually I want to show you this. I don't know if you got it. You probably got a copy of the Entertainment Weekly.
Yeah, Entertainment Weekly,
so
absolutely.
This was a Barnes & Noble exclusive, which we don't have in Canada. And a good friend of the show, Barry Brophy, sent a couple copies over. So I love that. I just can't wait. I have to ask you before I let you go, because I know you got to go, and I could talk to you all day, but we're going to let you go, I promise. I don't know if you're allowed to mention this or not. Did you share any scenes with Gina Carano, or was the Mandalorian there at all? Or
I was with Carl. I was with Carl.
Okay.
I'd like to just talk culturally for a second. As an Italian American, we also have our own favorites. Things that inspire us. And what a beautiful series the Rocky series was for me. That music too really inspired me as a kid to believe in yourself and to not give up and to be passionate, along with our African American brothers and sisters. Just how beautiful a melting pot America is in terms of our diversity, whether you're Italian, African American, Puerto Rican, Jewish, Irish, Russian, wherever you come from. To be able to come up from the bottom and to fight and for what you believe in, and to be alongside Carl was obviously a dream come true. What a powerful presence, what an incredible professional, an actor. You talk about diva mentalities as far as sometimes where you hear about people being spoiled in the workplace. And I can't tell you what an honor it's been to be alongside people like Carl Weathers, or to be alongside Hugh Jackman. I was a double on Van Helsing, or with Will Smith on Bright. To have these men as my inspiration is just more than I could have ever asked for.
That's awesome. And Carl Weathers will be directing an episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Apparently that was reported. So that's awesome.
That is correct.
All right. I'm not going to ask you any more spoilers. You can send me texts if you want to do that. I won't ask you anymore. I'm going to let you to go. I know you got to get going. Thanks so much for joining me here. Before we do though, if you tell people where they can find you, to follow you, to get more information, because I'm sure you're going to be releasing little tidbits as the series progresses.
Absolutely. Search Dominic Pace on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. And I really look forward to being part of the fan base. And again, if there's anything children in need, are asking for, in terms of maybe just a little hello to brighten up somebody's day, if I can do it, I will be there for you. I can't tell you how grateful I am for my life and just all my loved ones. Starting to get emotional. It's just quite a dream come true. And whatever I can do to make others happy, I certainly will. I'm just beyond words right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Everyone's going to get out. When you come down, if there's something close to the border that I can get to, I'm going to come to a con. I'm going to get you to sign this magazine and the book that you're going to be in too. That's happening. You're going to be in a book. It's going to happen. I cannot wait. Gecko will be in a book. It's not going to happen. Because the Bounty Hunter Guild was from the Legends. They're going to bring it back. It'll be in a book. You're going to be in there. Can't wait. Can't wait to see your reaction to it. Thank you so much for all of your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. And all my best to all the listeners and fans.
That was my conversation with Dominic Pace from The Mandalorian. His name could be Gecko. It might not be. I'll tell you what. Not only can I now wait to get whatever novel his character appears in, I cannot wait to get a Black series, a Vintage series, and a Funko Pop of quote-unquote Gecko, as he is known. Cannot wait. That is my hope. That is my goal. This is the Outlander Club. I'm James Ozile. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And for those of you watching, thank you for watching. Music off the top and the back by John Norris. Thanks so much, everyone. And as always, may the force of others be with you.
May the force be with you. Goodbye, old friend. May the force be with you.
Yippee!